the Mexican government seized from the Jalisco cartel in 2020. In 2015, it was the Mafia's turn for a loss. The Italian government seized 2 billion euros in bank deposits, 3,000 companies, and 12,000 properties from them before realizing they had bitten off more than they could chew. In their words, it was more difficult to manage the property seized from the Mafia than it was to confiscate it. And that's because crime is a business, and some of the most profitable businesses in the world are also the most ruthless. So what are the 10 richest criminal organizations in the world, you ask? Let's dive in. Number 10, the Taliban. I bet you didn't expect to see the Taliban on this list, but I'm also sure you already know that the Taliban is a criminal organization. Founded in September 1994 by the evasive Mullah Mohammed Ammar and 50 students, the Taliban grew to become a real problem in Afghanistan. After attacking the Afghan government more times than once, losing and winning the Afghan territory from the US, the Taliban's now rule of Afghanistan have imposed their extremist ideals of the people. But those who have suffered the most have been the women and girls. They have blocked them from exercising their fundamental rights to expression, movement, and education, and have also blocked their basic rights to life, livelihood, healthcare, food, and water. Now, beyond their reign of terror, the Taliban is also run like a business, and that's what has allowed them to survive for so long. When they seize a territory, their first point of call is looking for how they can convert the manpower of the population under their control and the resources they have stolen into more wealth. And quite ironically, the Taliban's primary source of income comes from the production of a trade of illegal substance, mainly opium and heroin. They also get tens of millions from pirate mining of natural resources within the regions under its control, collecting ransom for hostages and from donations. But it gets deeper. The Taliban relies on the substance networks created and refined by the cartels of Mexico. And today, they've been able to make Afghanistan the biggest heroin growers and producers in the world. More opium is grown in Afghanistan than there are farms for coca in all of Latin America. And the result of this is that the Taliban is worth a staggering $800 million from Forbes' estimates. Number 9, Sinaloa Cartel. Over the past decades, the Sinaloa cartel has grown to become one of the most influential drug organizations in the world. In the drug trade, there is hardly any cartel that has the presence, the exploits, and the bank that Sinaloa cartel has. Even after their leader, El Chapo, got captured and locked in the most secure prisons in the world, his cartel remained relevant and profitable. Today, they control 60% of revenue globally. And Fortune magazine says the cartel's revenue sits at $3 billion annually. But this is where things get tricky. No one can tell for sure just how much the cartel truly makes. When El Chapo was captured, the cartel suffered some losses and lost some hundreds of millions worth of merchandise and distribution routes, but they recovered well enough to still remain at the top of the business pyramid. And according to El Chapo himself, the cartel is under new leadership. El Mayo, a shadowy figure who is rumored to be worth billions. So depending on who you ask, the Sinaloa cartel could be worth as much as $6.5 billion and as unbelievably high as $500 billion. But since we can't accurately measure their net worth, we'll stick with the official estimate, $3 billion. Number 8, Ndrangheta. The second largest mafia organization in the world is the Ndrangheta. They were the first to get in bed with South American cocaine dealers, and as a result, today they control much of the transatlantic drug market distribution channels into Europe. In the past, they were integral to the rise of the infamous yet legendary New York crime families, and their presence is still felt in the US. So how much are they worth? Well, that figure sits pretty around $4.5 billion. And while it might seem staggering, it is justified because the organization is more than 2 centuries in the making. Now beyond their empire in Europe, the Ndrangheta had sustained a reputation as the ultimate peacemakers in conflicts. They have been known to organize meetings between warring factions and with other criminal organizations. It was this quality that led them to forge alliances with cartels in the 20th century and subsequently take control of Europe's drug scene. Make no mistake, the Ndrangheta are not a peace-loving mob. They can be deadly when they want to, but they know how and when to use diplomacy to get what they want. Number 7. Camorra. In 2005, this man, Cosimo de Lora, who at the time was the acting head of his family's clan under the Camorra, kidnapped, tortured, and burnt alive the former girlfriend of a rival as he tried and failed to get his location from her. This is not even the breadth of the Camorra's brutality, and yet, despite how much the government has cracked down on this organization, they still exist today. In fact, the Camorra is one of the most efficient and one of the most profitable surviving mafia organizations. How profitable? Fortune magazine estimates that the criminal group rakes in an estimated average of around 4.9 billion annually. And all of this is gotten from exploitation, firearms trafficking, narcotics peddling, gambling, and extortion of the most violent kind. One of the most amazing qualities of the Camorra is the fact that they don't have a centralized system of management. Unlike the pyramid-like structure of the Sicilian Mafia, where everyone knows who the Godfather is, the Camorra is made of several individual clans that has bosses and operate within hundreds of affiliates. No wonder why they have been in existence since the 17th century. Number 6. Yamaguchi-gumi. Most people know them as the Yakuza, but the Yakuza is an umbrella term for criminal organizations that exist within Japan. And of the lot, the Yamaguchi-gumi are the largest. But they aren't just large, they are also thoroughly organized, incredibly influential, and ruthlessly disciplined. Founded in 1915 by a tenured criminal named Harukichi Yamaguchi, Yamaguchi-gumi would pick up a century's worth of violence, and that violence is not exclusive to outsiders. If you mess up as a member, you're required to chop off your fingers or ear in a ritual of an atonement called yubitsumi that reaffirms your loyalty to the codes and ethics of the gang. The Mafia and Yakuza share a lot in common. On one hand, the Yakuza actively involves themselves in dispute resolutions that often leaves them richer, and they are also known for their heavy involvement and control of the gambling sector and drug trafficking in Japan. And when it comes to their structure, they also piece themselves together like the American Mafia, familial relations bound together in elaborate hierarchies where the initiated give up their past life completely and adopt their new one. Now, make no mistake, the Yakuza is just as old as the American Mafia, and the Yakuza existed for hundreds of years. And that's part of why today they are worth a staggering $6.6 billion. Number 5. Solonsevskaya Bratva. Everyone knows that Russia is built different from the West. So you can imagine what a Russian mafia would look like, and more importantly, what it would be worth. Unfortunately for us, the Russian mafia does exist. They are called Solonsevskaya Bratva, and their founder, Sergei Mikhailov, would rather be called a businessman than a thief. The man started a criminal enterprise in the 1980s as a waiter who had served a prison term for fraud. It grew to become a dangerous gang of foot soldiers. These foot soldiers were originally local unemployed young men with aggressive tendencies, but with time, they expanded and became more organized, operating territories that stretched from Russia to the major parts of Europe, North America, and even Africa. Today, they deal in every type of criminal activity you can think of: racketeering, extortion, illegal gambling, arms trafficking, human trafficking, and much more. Their structure is highly decentralized. The organization is made up of semi-autonomous bridges that more or less operate independently from each other. However, they have a mutual respect for one another, and they will unite forces and resources if they encounter threats that surpass an individual brigade's capacity. What makes them especially dangerous is the fact that they are now on a level where they can influence the Russian state for their own benefit. And they've even been able to do this by reinvesting ill-gained wealth into legitimate businesses like casinos, financial institutions, and even an international airport in Russia called Vnukovo Airport. By 1990, they even got more sophisticated and began moving their blood money through banks. And this allowed them to get close to the Russian oligarchs, who are, quite frankly, not too different from the career criminals themselves. At the very top of the food chain, the Russian mafia is run by a 12-person council that routinely convenes to assess their organization. And today, they are 9,000 members strong. According to Forbes magazine, the Solonitskaya Bratva is worth around $8.5 billion. Number 4. D Company. Have you ever heard of D Company? If your answer is no, then Dawood, the founder of the Indian terrorist unit, would be pleased, because the billionaire criminal has been a pain in the backside of the Indian state for more than 3 decades, yet no one has been able to nab him or bring down his multi-billion-dollar organization. According to some resources, he was 3rd on the FBI's most wanted list, and at some point, he has been blamed for several terrorist attacks as well as actively supporting ISIS. But it doesn't end there. Dawood's company, which he started in the 70s, ships an ungodly amount of heroin and opium. And today the criminal organization makes at least $6.7 billion yearly. But forget about the money for a second. The truth is this: no one knows how much Dawood's company is truly worth. They aren't sure just how he makes his money, and they don't even know where he is. Ever since he masterminded the 1993 Mumbai bomb blast, the Interpol, CIA, and the FBI have tried and failed to locate him. And the only reason they have estimates of his wealth is because of the businesses they were able to track. Dawood's might never be caught, and his true wealth might never come to light. Number 3. Sicilian Mafia. In March of 2014, a 4-year-old boy was shot dead, along with his mother and her boyfriend, near the southern city of Taranto in a suspected mob hit. The event was so shocking that Pope Francis spoke up against the Mafia. But that's a small price to pay to become a member of the Sicilian Mafia, otherwise known as the Cosa Nostra. Many would literally kill to be members of the organization. And that's because Cosa Nostra is beyond just a criminal organization. It is a religion, a way of life. It is a life or death for every one of its members. The group had its humble origins in the 1800s in Sicily, Italy. Legend has it that it started as a prison gang that had a semblance of the same structure and values that the modern-day mafia still has. After years of refining and social climbing, they began to work hand in hand with oppressive governments, carrying several questionable assignments for the corrupt government officials. Eventually, they were forced to expand to the US and Europe when totalitarian governments took power. Today, they oversee a vast network of gambling, extortion, money laundering, human trafficking, and many others. Now, if you're wondering how much they're worth, it's somewhere in the region of $7 billion. Number 2. Gulf Cartel. Founded by Juan Nepomuceno Guerrera in the 1930s. The Gulf Cartel is one of the oldest and one of the most ruthless cartels in the world. From their domestic base in Mexico, they run international distribution networks into many parts of Europe and North America. However, their ruthlessness is what has made them survive for so long. Getting kidnapped by the cartel is often worse than a death sentence for a variety of reasons, but most likely because you're likely to disappear without a trace. This is what happened to the Cazares family in the 2011 Matamoros mass kidnapping. Despite the intervention of practically every law enforcement agency in the world, 5 men from the family are still missing to this day. The Gulf Cartel also has an affinity for every form of crime. Maybe it's because they have been around for so long, and maybe it's because law enforcement agencies have tried and failed to bring them down. Over the years, they have amassed a staggering amount of wealth that, according to most sources, is north of $10 billion. Out of all the cartels, they have suffered the most at the hands of anti-drug agencies, and yet they have survived. And it's a testament to not only their longevity, but their ability to remain profitable as an organization of crime. Number 1. The Triads. At the top of the food chain are the Chinese Triads. As an organization, the criminal enterprise has existed longer than many can trace, and it's without a doubt older than all of the other criminal organizations on this list. They have existed for hundreds of years and are involved in a host of criminal activities from racketeering to drug trafficking and murder. Today, their area of specialization is human trafficking, and they have been doing this for more than a century. One of the major reasons why it is so difficult to disband the Triad is because, like the Russian Mafia and the Camorra, this organization runs a decentralized structure, and they are incredibly secretive. so secretive that most of the operations still remain a mystery to this day. Over the years, the ones we know have extended across every continent on the globe, and they have participated in activities that are too graphic to show or even state here. Just know that for every individual that goes missing, there's a high chance that the triad had a hand in it. So, how much is this nefarious organization worth? $13 billion.